Hey, and welcome to this session of Excel. We're going to look at text and how text is handled in Excel. If you make a function and you want to write a text, you can use the quotation marks to write your text, and it will be displayed as a text. Note that we can easily tell a text from a number by seeing that it is aligned to the left compared to a number that is aligned to the right by default. We can always set the alignment up here. This won't change the cell from being a text to a number. It will just align it to the right or to the left for stylistical purposes. But this is a way for us to quickly see whether Excel treats something as a text or as a number. So if we want to use it in a function, we then write two quotation marks to say where our text is. Here is our text. And there's our text. We can also use this for numbers 1, 2, 3, and it will be treated as text, as you can see, aligned to the left. Again, if we reference it, it will be referenced as text. This carries through. What happens if we don't use it? Well, if we don't use it for numbers, it is just a number. If we don't use it, here is our text, we get an error. This is an error because there's a hashtag here and it says name. It doesn't understand what this is. Why? Because if we don't use the quotation marks and we type something out, Excel interprets it as we want to either reference a function or reference a cell or something of this nature. So that's why we add the quotation marks. In a similar vein, if we want to write text, we can add a single apostrophe, and it will interpret that as to the rest that comes after it as text, so it will ignore it. This is very helpful if we want to write something along the lines of equals 2 plus 3, for example. We can get that into a cell that we then might want to write 2 plus 3 here, 5. So it's a way to display a function. We just copy it and paste it in with an apostrophe first. So that's a quick way to sort of display that. And a quick answer to the question that some of you might think is, well, what if I want to display an apostrophe? Well, then we do 2 apostrophes. That's an apostrophe. There we go. And if we want to display 2, well, we just add 3, right? And then we get, that's 2 apostrophes. So those are 2 quick ways to get a text. Now, secondly, we see that if we want to add text together, for example, we might have a first name and a last name. Let's make it capital letters there. We want to add that together. So if we have first name in row D or in column D and last name in column E, we want to add them together in column F. We can do that by using the AND function. So we can refer to one and write and refer to the other one. This will add these 2 together in a text string, as it is called, in just a sequence of letters or characters interpreted as text. So we do this, and what do we see? We get it together. However, this might not look so nice because we put them, put them together. That's what concatenate means, concatenation. But we also might want to add a space between them. So how do we do that? Well, we just add another and then just add it as text. And if we just do it like this, we will have a space there. I forgot to add the actual space there. We add the space, and then we'll get a space between them. So that way we can add different text to each other, if we want to add them directly, we just use the and. If we want to have a space, then we'd use an and a space. Of course, we could have had a space in its own cell, but usually that's more of a hassle to deal with. So we can do this. I'm going to do this with references, but again, we can do this with any kind of text if we want to write it in. So hello there. We get hello there. And of course, without a space because we didn't have that. So there we go. Now, this is very useful, as we see, when we want to add certain things together. If we want to add, and this is often the case in databases, that you have columns we want to add together into some sort of either a key or in other ways a way of providing a unique identifier for a list. And either one could do that by numbering them. Let's say we have a large database here, columns B, C, D, and E. We could just add numbers here, 1, 2, 3, and have this as sort of an ID key. And this would ID uniquely each row. But if we want to compare this list to another list, we're not sure that they have the same key here. But if we're sure that they have, you know, different first and last names or something else, a combination of these might provide a key that is unique, and thus it is beneficial to use it. Now, we see that we can also use the concatenation with numbers. So if we have, we can write 3 and 4 and 5. Then we get 3, 4, 5, but it will treat it as text. We see here, it is still text. However, we can, if we use it in a function, like for example by adding it to one, it will be treated as a number. So it can still be used as a number in this way, but it will be treated here, as we can see, it's aligned to the left as text. But we can easily shift it to make it a number. Let's see if we add 0, then again, it's just a way to make it into a number. Now, if we want to separate something from a text, for example, here we have, let's say we also have a middle initial. Let's do it something like that. There we go. We might want to instead of putting it together as we just done, we might want to separate. We can use some functions for that. We have the right, left, and mid function. So the right function just takes some text like this and take a certain amount of characters starting from the right. So the right would be here, this N, and then O, S, S, and so on. So how many do we want to take? Let's start with by taking, let's take, yeah, 4 is good. So of this sequence, we want to take 4 characters starting from the right. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's see what we get. And we get those 4. We don't get the order in which we take them. That's the N, O, S, S. We get them in the same order instead as here, which is logical sense if we're talking about words, for example. So we get the last here. So in this case, if we want the last name, we see, oh, the last name is 8 characters. Then we do this and we get the last name. Now, this depends. Sometimes it's useful because we know that there's the, for example, in the Swedish social security numbers, we know that the first 6 digits have to do with the birth date, and so you might want to always get 6 characters there. In other cases, there might be something of equal length, so it's an easy way to do it. Otherwise, we'll have to find a manual way to deal with it. There are ways to do that too. But the basic function is we take a certain amount of characters and we decide that here. And in order to get that letter. Now, let's look at the other version of it. It's called left. Does the exact same thing, but starting from the left. So we'll take this text, and how many characters? Well, we'll use 5 characters there, and that's how we get back the first name. Now, if instead of starting at the left or starting at the right, we want to start in the middle, we can use the mid function. If you use the mid function, we start in the middle. Where in the middle? Well, that's what we get to decide as well. So we say somewhere. Where do we want to start? Let's say we start at 7, and I take 2 characters. Let's see what we get there. We get the A dot. And how? Why is that? Because we start at character 7, J-O-H-A-N, that's 5 characters, and then the space is the 6th character, and then A is the 7th character. And then we take 2 characters, which is including this one, and the next one, which is the dot. So the starting character, you will include, and then that, and in case you're picking 2, the next one. If we pick 3, we'll have the one after that, so we'll include the space. 4 will also include the S, so we see. So that's to bear in mind. Again, for explanations of functions, we can always click on the FX button to get the function box. It explains, we have the name of the function, the explanation of what the function does, returns the characters from the middle of a text string, giving us given a starting position and length, and then it also explains what inputs we have. Text is the text string from which we want to extract the characters, this right here, and we get a preliminary also result. We click in the cell F9, and we get what's in there. What is that text string? Starting number of characters, we put 7, is the position in the first character you want to extract, so it includes the one you want to extract. And number of characters to how many characters you to return from text. So in case you're unsure, it's always good to click on this FX button to get an explanation of what the function does. Lastly, we might want to know how long a text string is. We can use the len function. And we see here, returns the number of characters in a text string. We see if we reference this, we get 17 because there's 17 characters here. Johan is 5, space 6, A dot, 7, 8, space again 9, and Svensson's another 8, so 17 in total. And that is good in case we want to use numbers here, for example. Where do we want to start? How many characters do we want to go? Here, how far do we want to go? How far do we want to go? We can use the len, which calculate the length in amount of characters of a text string. We can use this in order to help make these references instead of putting them in here, 5, 8, and 7, and 2, which is a static way. We look here, we count ourselves, we add it in, instead making it dynamic by allowing Excel to make that counting for us. And so being smart as in what we see and what we don't see, we can now have Excel work it out for us. Let's see an example of that here. So let's add some other names. It's always hard to think of names on the fly, but let's add some here. There we go. We see we have here some names. If we, well, this function adds the little initial. Let's remove that. Let's just add a space there, like that. No initial. Pull it through. How do we get back the first names? So we have first name, last name, name. Let's add the first name again. How do we get this back, and how can we get the last name back? Well, we can use length to calculate. So, and remember, as a general practice, if we're using several steps, we can include them in several cells initially. That gives us more overview, allows us to easier manipulate and think about things, but at the cost of taking up more cells and perhaps be more cluttered, less clean of an approach. If we look here in this, we can calculate the length of these names. Okay, but if we want to instead use the and we can also calculate the length of first name and last name. So instead of length of the total names, we can just do length of first name and last names. So here's the length of the first name. How could we get the first name from a column just with the names, a first and last name? Well, we could do right left. We find the first name on the left side, so we do left from our text. And how many characters do we need to go? Well, we go 5 characters, right? Because that's the length of the name. And here we thus get the first names back dynamically. Now, of course, this takes up 2 cells. Can we do it in 1 cell? Of course we can. So let's do left from the name. And how many characters? Well, let's do the length here. And now we see that we count the length, we get that, and we can do it in one go. Same with this, we can do a similar way. We start by doing right name and then calculating the length of the last name. Oh, missed a parenthesis. And there we get the last names back. Now, obviously, this seems perhaps a bit circular because the way we get the length is by calculating based on a cell that already has the name. So you might say, well, why, if we have a cell with the first name, why don't we just reference that instead of going this roundabout way? Well, this was just to show that we can use the length to help us out. And here, yes, we refer to the name. We can just refer to that immediately. That's simpler. But we can use other ways, even if we don't have this, to calculate with the help of this function. So this is a simple way of doing so. We're going to look at more at that later in a different video. But this is just to get an idea of how these two work together. Now, when we look at names in Excel, or at text, Excel doesn't really care about cases. So if we write hello, obviously it will ask us why we're writing that, because that's not the name of a function. And here, when I click the back arrow, it assumes I wanted to jump to the next cell. So it exited this cell and said that, well, what we have in the cell is a bit strange, but maybe you missed a extra quotation mark. Do you want to add that correction? We say yes, which is actually why I pressed the back arrow, because I wanted to go back. But you see here, press the back arrow in here, that's fine. But for some strange reason, when I pressed it before, it jumped back instead. But anyways, here's the text. It says hello. Here we can add another text, hello, in lowercase. Are these two the same according to Excel? If we prepare them, or if we compare them, is this one equal to that one? We get true. Again, the equal functions we added to a cell like this is a Boolean question, just add, or a logical question, true or false. Is this the case or not? Is that one equal to that one? And we get true. Excel considers them the same. And we can also try it out in general. We can just say is yes equal to yes. It's true. Variations of this, true. So we see that there's no difference in how Excel considers these two cells. If we have text, we might want to keep it uppercase or lowercase or in other ways. So for example, we might want to make this into uppercase. In that case, we use the function upper. So just upper, and then we can refer to the text, and it will make it in uppercase by just writing upper. Or we can use the function lower to make text into lowercase. So that can change those things. And so, for example, we can make this into lowercase completely or uppercase completely. Sometimes you might want to do that. Make this the first name's lower and last name's upper. You sometimes see in databases, and that's an easy way to make that correction. If instead we want to make it into a name, we can use the word proper, and it will capitalize the first letter. So if you have names that are like this and you want to change them to look like this, then we can use proper on it, and then we get it back, and also lowercase is the rest, so we can do the same for these ones. Now, lastly, we talked a little bit about it before. If we have, for example, something that looks like this, if we have, let's see here, if we have something that says $50 or $250, we see that Excel treats it as text. It's aligned to the left. And why is that? Because we have this dollar sign. So how do we get rid of that? Well, we either do our right function, where we just take the right 3 characters and we get 250. Now again, it treats it as text perhaps, but we see we can take this and add 0. It will become a number. And we can actually do that straight in this as well. Plus 0, it becomes a number. We cannot do that with this. Plus 0, we get an error term. Hashtag, that's an error. And it says value. What value would this be? We're not sure. So Excel doesn't know what this means. So we can't add $1 to make it 251. It doesn't get it. But we can do it with this function here. We can add another $30 to it. Okay. And then if we want to add it back, we just take and write dollar and this here, and we get it back in a dollar amount. So that's a way to work around that. Another way of doing so is to use the function substitute. So substitute this text, and we can see here if we get the box up. So replaces existing text with new text in a text string. Text is the text reference to cell containing text which you want to substitute characters. So that's this. And in the old text is the existing text you want to replace. What do we want to replace here? We want to replace the dollar sign. In the case of old text does not match the case of text, substitute will not replace the text. So we need to write in something here that actually exists, right? If we say substitute the t's, well, there's no t here, so there's nothing to substitute. So what do we want to replace it with? So we can just replace it with nothing. can write like that. Again, the double quotation marks to symbolize nothing is very helpful here. And lastly, this is we see that these three are bolded. That means they need to be added. This one is not bolded. It means it's optional. Specifies which occurrence of alt text you want to replace if omitted every instance of alt text. So it just means if there's several, they might only want to replace one. Well, in this case, we omit it because we want to replace all of them. And that's fine. And that's how we get 250. Again, we can add 0 to make it into a number. So substitute is very helpful, specifically if perhaps it's not to the left or to the right, or we don't want to see it in the middle. Just somewhere we can use this function. Okay, so now we have an idea of how to work with text in Excel, how to work around various kinds of issues in text we might find in databases, and how to add things, remove things, increase make it uppercase, lowercase, or a proper name, and deal with text with these functions.